Well, thine own self. Yeah, it was simply a matter of time before I got to this one. And this is one of those where I had to ponder it for a while because of the fact that this is a very strange episode structure. Because this episode comes the closest of any episode of The Next Generation to not having Picard in it. Yeah, they really didn't need him for this episode. Could have made the episode without him. Didn't need him at all. Anyways, so what do we have? Well, this is one of those things where if you were adapting this for a tabletop game such as Star Trek Adventures, there's a few things to specifically to look at that are worth noting. The first, of course, is the location of the week. Barkon IV, an alien world that is a pre warp civilization and one that the Federation does not want to culturally contaminate, and thus are going to a considerable amount of time and effort to avoid letting the Barkonians know of the existence of the United Federation of Planets, despite the fact that a Federation long range drone crashed on their planet and is in the process of irradiating the biosphere. So, the crew of the Enterprise are here to fix that problem. Now, before we get into the actual plot, one thing I feel the need to point out is that the Barkonians are actually one of those alien of the week races where they genuinely put a considerable amount of time and effort into making it more than just a one note race. Because Data has to, live with them for however many days. And Barconians are not particularly interesting looking. They have these like weird lines on their foreheads and whatever this is. Honestly, this kind of looks like a rash, so those might actually be. Oh wait, that's right. Radiation exposure. Yeah, I think that's supposed to be there to indicate the fact that she's sick from radiation exposure. Anyways, yeah, because you don't see those on him. Anyways, I'll get to the radiation exposure thing later. But yeah, we don't really have a whole lot with the Barconians. They're a pre-warp civilization. Their technology is, 1700s level or something like that. Europe, that is, not anywhere else in on Earth, but 1700s Europe specifically, which also uh, defines the way that they did the attire for the characters. Is that they're 1700s Europe attire as well, or something similar. The other thing that's noteworthy here is that they actually went to the time and effort of uh, elaborating what Barconian mythology is like, which is one of the things that makes this much more interesting than most of the Alien of the Weeks. Is because they explain the concept of mythology, and there are certain things about this that, due to the fact that we only see them for one episode, and the episode isn't really focused on Barconian mythology. We don't actually know how many of these things in the Barconian mythology are in fact true, and how many of them are speculation on the part of the Barconians, or just straight up superstition. But they have, demons, spirits, monsters. They believe that they're not the only sentient species on their planet, and that there's a race that they refer to as Icemen, which live in the mountains that are like 200 miles away from them. So they're not anywhere that the people in this village actually went to, which is an interesting aspect of this because all we see of the Barconians is one village. Now, we do not have any reason to believe that the technology level of other parts of the planet is higher. However, it is actually possible that they are not, in fact, the only sentient race on the planet. It's also possible that the Icemen that they're talking about are actually just a different ethnic group of Barconians that looks different because They immediately recognize Data as an Iceman, and that suggests that maybe possibly that's what the Icemen actually look like. Not that anyone actually has proof of this or anything. They never, at any point in the episode, actually try to explain the truth of what the Icemen are. They just leave it up to the viewer to speculate that the Barkonians are superstitious and making things up because they don't actually know the truth. And quite frankly, we act as viewers don't know because again, that's all that there was told. However, it's more than we get from most aliens of the week. Some aliens of the week, we literally don't know anything about them other than their name and what certain members of the race look like. So, this is relatively good for an alien of the week. All right, so that was part one. Now to get into the actual plot. See, Data as an Iceman was sent to the Valorian Mountains to recover the crashed probe. Alone, presumably because of the fact that the probe is emitting dangerous radiation and Data is believed to be functionally immune to the dangerous radiation, and the Enterprise had reason to go to Taranko colony, and they didn't want to leave behind a large number of people there because those would be more easily noticed by the locals. And they figure it's like, Data's super competent. He can handle this by himself. He did not. But you know, that's happened. Now, interesting is that Taranko colony, we don't really know much about it other than it's a part of the Federation. That's it. It needed medical supplies delivered to it, and the Enterprise D ended up doing that. This feels like one of those things where you would normally have a freighter deliver medical supplies. Why are you sending the Federation flagship to do it? Hmm. Carries certain implications. Not that we know anything, but it does carry implications. Oh yeah, also there's another ship called the Lexington, which was a Nebula class that wasn't going to Taranko, but was able to hand off things to the Enterprise. Let's see, have an ensign of the week who, he's there. This is apparently the only episode we see him in. Oh well. All right, so Data's time in the Valorian Mountains did not go as originally planned. He ends up uh, getting, injured in the process of attempting to uh, fix the drone, and well, ends up with temporary amnesia, wanders into the Barkonian village and stuff. Now, as a plot hook, you could in a TTRPG have a team of players get beamed down to a planet and told to, make the probe disappear and give them a time limit and then have say that they're going to have the ship come back to pick them up after a certain amount of time. Notably, this probe, the radiation field that it's generating, is actually something that is hazardous to Federation technology because again, we don't know why the probe has this kind of radiation on it. We don't know what the Federation was using it for, but you know, it was something that was actually kind of potent. Uh, Data, as part of his dismantling of the probe, was supposed to remove all of the pieces that had dangerous radiation leaking out of them, which he put into a box, which was presumably insulated to protect people from radiation exposure. Then, when he wanders into the village, people open the box. Then they get radiation exposure. Yeah. Anyway, though, having your players try to muddle through the process of dismantling and re- removing the pieces of the damaged probe, you could totally do that as a plot scene. Now, what was the B plot of this episode? Well, the B plot of this episode is based on Troy getting promoted to commander. Yeah. See, the whole promotion thing is what we have for that not quite no win scenario thing where Troy has to come to the realization that sometimes sacrifice is required, blah blah blah. The good of the many outweighs the needs of the few, or something something. So um, as a commanding officer on a starship, sometimes you have to do things that your crew is not going to survive because if you don't, the starship might be destroyed. You could actually have an entire episode around the players playing through that scenario. That would probably be more boring to most people than doing the whole probe retrieval thing, though. But depending on what your team that are playing your game hey, maybe the players in your game would like that. It's an option. Not saying it's the option, but it's an option. Now, the other one is what we have pop up in Act 5. Data did not fully succeed in his mission. You see, Data gets killed by the villagers because of them getting radiation exposure. Data apparently fixes the radiation exposure thing before they kill him by pouring something into their well that when they drink the water from the well will uh, cleanse the radiation exposure from them. Yeah, okay. Anyway, and then, but here's the thing: because of the fact that Data is dead, and that when the Enterprise comes back from delivering things to that Federation colony world that they were flying to, they have to figure out where Data went and send down a away team to find Data and also, actually retrieve the destroyed remains of that probe because Data has not actually retrieved the destroyed remains of the probe. Afterwards, everyone beams to the ship. Mission complete. We're all done now. But that is actually something that would be an interesting thing that you could have for a quick mission for a team. It's like someone got sent to do something on this planet. We haven't heard from them. We need you to go figure out what happened to them and why. You wouldn't actually need to have an android be the person you are going to retrieve. Could be, someone who perhaps the explanation in your case is that this individual was supposed to signal the ship to pick them up, but their communicator got destroyed uh, but while they were in the process of attempting to retrieve the remains of the destroyed probe, and now they can't call the ship. So you have to figure out where they are. There's a lot of options you can come up with. That's just one alternate. The basic idea of infiltrating a pre-warp civilization and avoiding being noticed, it's a fun one. There's a lot of things you can do with that. This particular civilization, relatively easy to sneak around with, honestly. Having them see you, unless they think you're like a dangerous invader, they're probably not actually going to pay that much attention. Although, given the social structure of this specific race, if they do actually have the idea of dangerous foreigners, so don't give them a reason to think you're dangerous foreigners. Anyways, I do have to say that it's interesting that they went to the time and effort of explaining why the village's well is so significant. It's like, oh yeah, you if you want to get water from the nearest um, actual body of water, it's a 2-day journey, presumably by foot, but still, it that is significant of a distance. Hmm. Anyway, though, yeah, like I said, there's several things about this one that are things you could work with. Trying to actually do all of this as a single story, no, I wouldn't do that. So like I said, it's like there's three different moving parts to this one, and trying to force them to mesh together as part of a adventure you're playing. Yeah, I don't know if that's a good idea. If you want to try it though, hey, you hit it's your game. Alrighty then. See you later.